Good afternoon, Fabian Onetti. We're going to quickly, before we go into Brazil with our friend Luiz Carvalho, that you all know, call on the markets. The market was with a good rally of almost 400 points, then only did 240 points. But funny enough, the leaders had a very good recovery in the technological sector. You know, the numbers that we follow, the Amazons, the Googles, all of them have 4 or 5%. And clearly, the news of General Motors having, you know, as I said, we said earlier, 14 quarters in a row of beating estimates. The stock was almost up 10% during the day at some point. So that's carrying a lot of the old consumer stocks. I remember we just had yesterday, it was the highest consumer confidence levels in 18 years. And, you know, General Motors, which is a big discretionary consumer, had a very good number, which is a surprise because remember, Ford reported a few days ago and was pretty lousy. So the market was high. Just now it crossed two things. One, that apparently November 21st, we will have Brexit 127 on the pound. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And the second one, also as making echo of what we said this morning, that apparently there is a document by the Politburo in China worried about the level of economic activity somehow related to the effect that the sanctions are taking, not the sanctions, the tariffs are taking a bite. Something that we've been talking every day. So that might soften the Chinese position in negotiations. Again, we will discuss that tomorrow in detail. The rest of the market, you know, good rally. The rally was overnight, kind of all over in Europe, in Asia, 1-2%. And also the dollar went down a little bit, which is a good sign that there is probably less panic. Obviously, the pound went up on this Brexit report, but also the euro and the other currencies had a rally. And also emerging markets, Argentina, Brazil, others were up 2-3%. So it was an overall, for this manic depressive market, a good day. We send it to you. Some of you were asking, so our analyst Gustavo Felici did a very thorough technical analysis piece on the big aggregates. We send it. It's in your email. If you didn't get it, let us know. We'll send it. But now, Luis, let's go back to our main thing. Jair Bolsonaro, not an unknown, but something that was unexpected. A guy that, again, has been in Congress forever, so he's not something that came out of nowhere, like Donald Trump, basically, with no previous political experience. But the guy was there. You know, people, and here the press is not being kind to him, but a guy, you know, from the right, you know, with sort of nationalistic ideas and all that. More than anything, destroys the political order in Brazil. Destroy, no, but alters the political order. You know, they all PT, PSDB, PMSDB, all the big parties, you know, Antonio Carlos de Magalhães, Fernando Henrique, you know, all the PT people, Lula, Dilma. He basically is like in a horse race, come out of, you know, out of nowhere, you know, in the turn, comes out of nowhere and has a massive win on the elections, 11 million votes to Fernando Haddad, and with, you know, big airs of renovation, in a way, probably what you and I have seen here in America, people wanted something different from the system. What's the first reading? And for those who haven't seen, Luiz Carvalho is a good friend, but also he was an institutional investor rank analyst for many years, portfolio manager as well. When he was an analyst, he was specialized in the Brazil telecom sector. So on top of being Brazil and a former Olympian in the swimming in the swimming business in the Olympics, he was a very well-ranked analyst, so he knows Brazil very well. So anyways, Luis, tell me what's going on.
I think your introduction was very good because it's Bolsonaro is something coming out of nowhere from a political standpoint, not part of any of the big parties, but the results were very impressive. Not only he won the presidency, but his party that had 4 representatives now has 52 representatives, with the prospects of that number increasing up to 60, maybe more. So he has a different agenda. He's a very socially conservative guy, but with a liberal agenda, which that's why the market likes, especially the Brazilian market is being rallying despite all the situation around the world. The Brazilian market has done relatively well, and he has because he likes his agenda, especially the economic agenda. But he's a new guy. Everybody's somewhat still shocked by the fact, the magnitude of his victory, and also by the fact that he's going to be well situated in Congress. His party is going to get a 10% chunk, but more importantly, the coalition of other parties that will be supporting him is very likely to breach the 2/3 necessary to get any
big legislation.
Any constitutional approval.
So let's talk about that. So we have a victory, and and some of the stuff is not market related. Security, that he's very concerned and all that. That will have an effect, but very long term.
The social part.
The social part is not. It doesn't have a market impact immediately. We'll see later. But then there are some serious reforms. We're going to talk about that. But the other big name is Paulo Guedes.
Yes.
When people say, "Well, the guys at the fringes," who knows? But everybody in the market knew Paulo Guedes.
Yeah.
He was a very well-known economist. Was he president of the central bank, or he wasn't? No.
He was a banker from Banco Pactual.
Oh, okay. He's the founder of Banco Pactual, one of the original founders of Banco Pactual. Yeah. So very well known, and everybody said, "Well, look at him. He's the guy who's going to be driving policy and that." So let's talk a little bit about that. Is he talking about because he mentioned at some point privatization of Petrobras or some privatization, and then we're going to talk about pension funds. What you think is kind of on the privatization agenda? What he was doing?
He has the most aggressive privatization agenda I've ever seen in Brazil. I mean, not even Fernando Henrique Cardoso or Collor going back decades ago. He's by far the most aggressive one. He said he wants to privatize everything. Okay. And he said everything includes everything.
Includes everything, okay.
Now, obviously, Bolsonaro came back and said, wait a second, there are some things that are too important, maybe we have to discuss. But what we know is that the privatization agenda is going to be a very aggressive one. Okay. And he's going to put a lot of things, a lot of the state-owned companies. Some of them are simply going to be closed. They are essentially not money-losing operations that wouldn't even be able to be sold. But he was going to be aggressive privatization. I think that is pretty much of a consensus today, and closing a lot of companies. So the market likes that. It is not a process that takes 3 months, but we know that that's the agenda of this new government. Okay,
and then Luiz, you will make a comment off camera, which as the big elephant in the room in Brazil is the pension system. People can retire early. Actually, Temer tried to do some changes, and then he lost the majority because of the scandals. And he couldn't push it forward. And I remember Fernando Henrique, when he had the opportunity, he exchanged that for being reelected, basically to change the constitution to allow for reelection. And I said that was a golden opportunity lost. That he gave that out.
He lost by 1 vote actually when he tried to pass it.
Exactly. So that was big. But then you were making the comment that, funny enough, his first trip is to Chile and is related to what Chile has done in the pension reform, which is big. What's the?
Yeah, there are two things that are two important things to know about the pension reform. One is that for the first time in a very long time, there is absolute consensus that some degree of pension reform has to be done. Even the opposition thinks that that's the case. So everybody believes that there is need for pension reform. The Congress is prepared to vote some degree of reform. The Supreme Court knows that it has to approve a reform. The market wants that. So that's the good news. The bad news is that obviously there is a lot of lobbying trying to weaken the type of reform you're going to do on the pension, especially because of the state-owned employees that lobby. Happens everywhere.
Okay.
Right. But this government is very committed to do it, and it's going to be the first and most important thing to measure the success of the Bolsonaro administration. People are expecting that to happen in the first 100 days. We will know what type of plan is going to be now and get approved in the first 100 days. But as you mentioned, Chile, why Chile is so important? Because Guedes wants to approve a reform that is a capitalization type of reform. Every individual worker will
create the individual account
his own
system.
Savings account, rather than the system as works today, where the existing workers have to pay for the pensioners.
Right, exactly.
So he wants to approve the Temer reform that will essentially phase out that system and replace by a Chilean-like capitalization system with individual savings account. So that's the plan, has already been announced. The details need to emerge, but ultimately there will be a package submitted to Congress with that.
Okay.
And Bolsonaro wants to go to Chile. He lived in Chile for years.
Oh, okay. Okay. So he has.
Together with some of the Chicago boys as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good.
So he will visit Chile, and in his agenda is to prepare that pension, the specifics of that pension reform, the capitalization part.
So that's huge, and some firms like UBS have say 40% rally from here on. Typical. First, on the typical fashion, buy on the rumor, sell on the news. That's like the short-term speculation. That's typical. But now some people are doing a strategic positioning in Brazil. Say, hey, if this thing is happening, things like Petrobras, it could be sold. Again, people like Brazil are saying, UBS, I'm sorry, the 40% rally could be here and very constructive.
If I may, just on Petrobras, sure. Because it's a stock is important, but for instance, Bolsonaro is reluctant to sell Petrobras, but Bolsonaro said, well, I might sell the refining business of Petrobras and have the company to focus only on exploration. So pieces of Petrobras have been sold and will continue to be sold.
Yes.
And those are big pieces. So this is likely to happen. Same thing with Eletrobras, same thing with all the others. So you're going to be selling a lot of assets, one way or the other. Even this so-called strategic company. And the others are going to be sold more aggressively.
More aggressively. That's perfect. So, key in Brazil has been always the Congress because, as you said, now they're the largest party with like 54, maybe 70 seats on a Congress that is 500 people.
Yeah.
But that's been always the case in Brazil.
Always.
There is not like Republicans and Democrats, two big parties. There is a collection of, the PNDB, PSDB, even the Communist Party, the PT. There's a collection of parties,
exactly.
Right? So, but you say that he will most likely get the majorities with the 2/3 to get most of these of the things enacted. What will you see be the risks of the agenda? What will you see are the things that, hey, look at this, if this thing happened, maybe, because everybody starts with a great promise, but, let's be sure.
The biggest risk that I see in the Bolsonaro administration is that because it doesn't come from a big party,
right?
It is if you look at like a soccer analogy, the bench is very weak. It's just a handful of guys who are essentially dictating or explaining what the policies are going to be. But they have to form a team. They have to have the ministries. They have to essentially form government.
To operate a massive bureaucracy, which is the Brazilian government.
Correct.
You don't have you don't have the deep bench of people for all the positions.
Especially because his party has never been in power, and he didn't get elected by a coalition for the election. He's forming a coalition now to govern with the Congress. So the risk is what type of guys he's going to bring in for the second and third levels, not necessarily for the top 15
right. But exactly the second.
So that is a problem that could create political risks. I think the political risks are the biggest risks. The risks of some degree that they don't know how to manage that process well. Let's say put a guy as Ministry of Education, the guy says some stupid thing, gets fired,
and then he gets
and he creates a lot of volatility. That I think, and the market thinks, is the biggest risk. The flip side of that is that the core economic team seems to be very, very much in place. The alignment of what they are saying is very clear. The central banker is very likely to stay from Temer, the market really likes the central bank management. So that economic part is okay, but everything else is a mining field.
Okay. And now, just going back to the vote a little bit, given that he came from the left field, and when we were looking at the polls, he always was leading, but clearly. Is this a voto castigo? Do you think that the people in Brazil, because of these issues of security, the drug trafficking and all the issues, he says we want something new? What do you think at the popular level, or talking to your friends in Brazil, what it was drove this big change in the political scenario? Said bring this guy. Basically.
Well, there was a lot of. It's a great question. it's a difficult answer.
Right.
Because like the Trump election here,
Right.
we're still going to write books about it for decades.
Exactly.
Of what exactly
What
happened.
happened? Very good
There are
point.
some elements like this was a campaign that was extremely cheap, run essentially on the internet.
Right, exactly.
With WhatsApp.
Right.
It's incredibly... he had 8 seconds of TV time
Right.
on every day on TV, while the other candidates had 5-10 minutes. So it was a very strange campaign. But you asked me what was the main reason. I think the main reason is people got really sick and tired of the PT and the left. Because at the end of 15 years in Brazil, 15 years of leftist government.
Right.
At the end of the day, you're left with a country that had horrible fiscal results, with horrible growth, and horrible social indicators, especially security and these other things. And people begin to realize, I mean, those guys are now in jail, the country is in this situation, nothing works, and they were telling me that everything was wonderful. So there was a popular change of mind regarding the direction that the country should take. Enough of left. Brazil has voted left for the last 15 years.
So, and even I was talking before, Fernando Enrique, they were center left. They were not really.
They were the classic PSD in Germany.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Social Democrats.
Social Democrats.
Yeah. That was as right as Brazil ever went.
Exactly. As I said, never was had like a government.
Liberal, classic liberalism, nowhere near.
And I think but also because my view is like as I always say, listen, 99% of the people wake up every morning and goes to work.
Yeah.
And when you start seeing all these massive corruption cases, like the Lava Jato in Brazil, people in jail, what you have in Argentina, we see it in Peru and everything. People is not in that business of robbing and doing corruption. So they say, listen, I don't want any of these people around here.
Exactly.
Just get them out. Thank you, Luis. Let's see. I think I have everything I wanted to ask. Miguel, did we miss anything that we're thinking or before? So the line is open. If anybody has a question or comment, the line is open now. Anybody? No. Okay. Anybody there? No. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll connect tomorrow.